Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Marketplace Risk Virtual Event Series. I'm Andrea, Director of Events and Logistics here at Marketplace Risk. Today, we welcome Matt Wilson, Senior Enterprise Account Executive at Ekata. Our virtual events are designed to help marketplace and sharing economy startups successfully navigate complex risk management, trust and safety, compliance, and legal subject matter so they can avoid distractions in order to focus on launching and growing. And be sure to check out marketplacerisk.com to access hundreds of hours of content, including our master's program, platform podcast, and previous live events. And to subscribe to our newsletter, where we keep you up to date on everything, including our events, the Marketplace Risk Management Conference in San Francisco, and the Sharing Economy Global Summit in London. If you're interested in speaking at one of our events, please submit your ideas at marketplacerisk.com. The call for speakers closes on March 15th for the Marketplace Risk Management Conference and August 15th for the Sharing Economy Global Summit. Thank you for tuning into today's session, Tapping into New Customers Without Friction. First, a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so the recording will be available for you to access on the Marketplace Risk website. Second, all attendees have listening capabilities only and are otherwise muted. And third, do submit your questions via the control panel. If we have time at the end, we will answer as many as we can. If we don't get to your questions, feel free to email us at info@marketplacerisk.com and we'll get your questions answered. And now, without further ado, Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Andrea, and hello, everyone. My name is Matt Wilson, and I'm here today to talk to you about tapping into new customers without friction. I am a Senior Enterprise Account Executive here for Ekata, based out of the UK, as I'm sure you can tell by the accent. And I am part of the wider EMEA team, which is based out of Amsterdam. I myself have been part of the fraud and identity industry now for about 10 years with varying different roles throughout the industry, coming from a credit card provider here in the UK responsible for onboarding new customers without friction and in some cases with friction in a fraud related role, through to working for bureaus in the UK, device vendors, and of course now into the world of Ekata. I'm going to now try and introduce you to Ekata if any of you haven't heard of what we do or how we do it. And then I'm going to give you our perspective of the growth of marketplaces and how you as an organization can start tapping into those new customers with as little friction as possible. And again, in some cases, adding friction to avoid those fraudsters that we all want to keep away. So Ekata itself, we're a global provider of identity verification data. And we have about 200 global employees now around the world with 2,000 global customers. That word global keeps coming up here, and it's an important part of what we do here and is kind of pivotal to our technology. We'll talk about why that is later on. We have offices in Seattle, Amsterdam, Budapest, and Singapore. They didn't add my London office onto this slide, unfortunately, but we continue to grow, and of course, our breadth of customers continues to grow with that. We were acquired in 2021 by that familiar brand on your screen there of MasterCard. So Ekata is now part of the MasterCard family. And of course, as being a relatively new acquisition, some of the bring to market kind of elements of our technology are still in the works, but of course we're very excited to be part of the group, the MasterCard company, and of course what that brings for us as we move forward with that relationship. We do have 20 integration and business partners around the globe, and again this is important because we often listen to our customers and they tell us that they have requirements to work with certain players, certain platforms in marketplaces in this particular example, and we are a fraud prevention company and really a data provider to those platforms. So we look to work with the best in class in that area. So we work with many integration and business partners around the world to achieve that. And then we work with big numbers, right? So we see over 5 billion digital interactions a year, 7 billion identity elements, and that enables us to have this understanding of bad from a fraud perspective, but really a lot of the focus today is actually how we understand what good looks like as well. So 98, 99% of the time you would expect your customers to be good customers, and today's presentation is a mix of understanding how you want to really give those guys the best possible experience. And then, of course, those 1%, those risky customers, how do we make their lives harder? How do we push them away from your marketplace and hopefully going elsewhere? So the growth of marketplaces is not new to us, but it's certainly a marketplace, an industry that continues to grow, and one that, again, I know it didn't take me long in this presentation to mention the word COVID, but in the pandemic, but this has grown significantly during this time for certain marketplaces in the landscape. You know, the desire and the want from us as consumers in this world to buy from a smaller organization to support small business has driven that marketplace growth. And I think, having seen some of the statistics of companies like Etsy and their purchases of Depop, that growth is going to continue to go up and up. Now, when we think about what that means from a friction point of view, or what that means from a fraud point of view as well, there's certainly some challenges that come with that as well. Our data suggests that micro merchants and sole proprietors have skyrocketed in the last decade, from 42 million in 2006 to 60 million in 2020. And those numbers from 2020 to 22, I'm sure you can imagine, have gone even more through the roof. We're getting close to that 100 million mark. Now, that challenge then comes onto your side, because you as a marketplace are the brand that your customers see, right? We as consumers want to buy from small businesses, but ultimately we also look at the brand that we interact with. So that you as the marketplace have this kind of social responsibility and need to represent yourself in a way that represents all of the brands that work underneath you. Now, when we talk about those brands and those sole proprietors and genuine individuals, how do we know that they're genuine when they sign up to your website? How do we ensure that you're performing the right amount of checks to ensure that that individual is who they say they are? And how do you know that when Matt Wilson, who has a small cupcake store online, is sending cupcakes and not sending something that we don't want out in the world? All of these challenges come back to you as a marketplace, because you are the brand that the customer sees, and you are the brand that, of course, will have to bear the brunt of any negative outcomes that come with that as well. So the challenges for this marketplace, as it continues to grow and continues to scale, will be significant, and we want to share some of our insights into thought processes around how you can impact that. So when you create an account on your site, I think really what I want you to do on this particular slide is start to put yourselves in the customer's shoes, start to ask questions that you wouldn't necessarily ask as you have conversations internally, and really say, well, why the question seems obvious, it begs to be asked, when was the last time you bought from your site? And when you start putting yourselves in the customer's shoes, you start to think about some of the processes that you have in place and ask the questions that we have on your screen here. So these questions really I want you to kind of start thinking about and be open to opening that conversation later in the presentation here. But at what point do you stop when it comes to friction on your website? A brand new customer to your world, of course, is more risky to you because you don't know everything about them. They haven't been with you for years like your existing customer base. But putting all of that additional friction in place can become too much, and these background checks can, of course, take too long. Often in the industry, we talk about things like biometric scanning or elements that come into play from that perspective. Now, I think all of us in the industry are in agreement that these are fantastic tools and tools that can be used for all of the right purposes when it comes to security, fraud prevention. But in some cases, does it take too long? Does the customer go somewhere else because this friction is just far too much? Are you looking on your side, at least, around how you review these customers as they come into your world? Are you only manually reviewing? Automated processes here as well come into play as well. So when we weigh up the two, that manual piece of the equation becomes another element of friction. So can you look to automate decisions? Can you use vendors that are able to give you things in real time to start routing those good customers down the right alley? They don't need to have manual intervention because you know from your data sources that this is a good guy and that you want to continue to operate with them. And again, that last question here about mapping out the entire onboarding process to understand what's required is very important. Are you talking to different departments within your organization? You may have your own responsibilities and you may need to take care of those, but are you talking to all of the different departments that contribute to the onboarding process? Is minimal friction top of mind, or is adding friction top of mind? These are all questions that you need to ask on your side. And I know Steve Jobs had a few things to say when he used to call up the Apple customer care line, because he himself, you know, one of the greatest CEOs of all time, was interested in this experience. Now, when we talk about onboarding, this doesn't just mean when the person first originates at your site, it also goes through to that first purchase, because when someone comes online, they want to start spending with you. And the question at this stage is, well, how do you think about making those payment processes as seamless as your onboarding process? This is a different interaction because money is involved here. Funds are being transferred in and out of your environment. Now, was the transaction seamless? What checks are absolutely required at this stage is an important question to ask yourselves again, because actually from a fraud perspective, you want to ensure you're within your chargeback ratio, but can you actually look at options to allow a certain amount of transactions through that wouldn't necessarily go through on the normal occasion? Can you take that additional level of risk to mean more good customers spending with you quicker because you trust in your data in the background? And do you have any workflows for special or collector's items? Of course, all of you will have different marketplaces on today's call. It may be travel, it may be fashion, it may be elsewhere. But what it means is you have different levels of risk in your journey. You might have a £10 transaction versus £100, $100, etc. Having those different workflows for those different customers is essential to your onboarding process, and having tools in place to help you do that is absolutely part of that. Now, with all of that being said, I think we went out into the market and interviewed more than 7,000 consumers across North America and Europe, and we asked them what they want from their digital experiences. Now, you'll see on this screen that these quotes start to conflict each other a little bit, because we have more than 70 consumers that say account creation should be instantaneous. I think I would probably be part of that contingent. However, when we look to the bottom quote, 92% of consumers expect this fast, frictionless experience we referred to, but also one that they're getting this trustworthiness and secure process in the background as well. So I want everything now, I want everything fast, I want everything instant, but I want to make sure that you as a marketplace are doing everything to protect my data, that everything that you're doing with my data is trustworthy, and of course that it's secure. So you as marketplaces have, of course, a challenge to balance both of those together. But it's an interesting kind of look on where the market tells us we're going here. This slide here actually kind of rolls in from that previous one when we talk about what the customer wants versus what we need to do in the background. Right now on the left-hand side here, you'll see the customer's view, and ultimately the customer sees your website. They see graphics, they see a pretty design, they see this kind of slick user experience as they go through your onboarding process and begin to become one of your customers. Now, from your point of view, you have all of these different conflicting regulations, customer experience, shipping, operation costs that come into the equation. And each and every one of these departments has their say in that onboarding process. It goes back to that point about them all talking to each other, because each and every one of these can impact each other as well. Now, really, this comes back to the analogy of when you buy a car, you probably don't think about who made the seats or the engine or the radio. You just want to see this final product and that the car drives properly. And this slide here tells you about that and what the customer is looking for. So when we go right back to the start of my presentation about putting yourselves in the customer's shoes and thinking about what they expect from the experience, it's very important that as you think about customer experience, fraud checks, regulations, etc., you always refer back to that need for the customer to have this presentation website at the front end that works for them and ultimately drives that kind of brand loyalty as you move forward as well. So we suggest a couple of things here to really intelligently reduce friction as part of your onboarding journey. And there are three kind of key pillars. I'm sure there's more. These are the ones that we kind of feel at the forefront of our minds right now. One would be that it's essential to keep your sign-up flows simple and to determine risk without requiring additional customer input. What do I mean by that? I think really on here, we're saying that don't ask for too much, ask for enough. Ask for enough information for you to perform your risk checks, to perform your KYC checks, etc., without going overboard and potentially deterring that customer base, which we saw from the survey there, that would potentially just go somewhere else. We on our side, Ekata, only require 5 data elements to do what we do. That's an intentional thing because we appreciate in some cases that not all of these additional data inputs that are out there in the market are available, and it's important that you keep that sign-up flow simple from our point of view. Now, routing good customers to fast, low friction experiences is absolutely important. And again, going back to my point earlier, about 98–99% of the time you would expect good customers on your website. Now, being able to automatically accept low risk customers in your onboarding journey with this low friction transaction experience drives the brand loyalty, drives them to come back, to tell their friends that they had a good experience, and ultimately grow your business. Now, what we mean by routing these good customers to this low friction experience is that, can you start to consider using data providers, different external tools, your own data, to potentially not go down the route of needing to perform checks around KYC, or potentially needing to do it but on a lower level or the lowest possible level that you can. So thinking about putting these technologies at the top of your waterfall to enable you to then route these good customers to this excellent experience that you've designed in the background means that they're getting what you would expect them to get, and they're experiencing that as well on the other side. So something to think about from that point of view. The final one is the flip side of that. So yes, you have your good customers, but we also want to make sure that you're flagging your risky users during sign up. So we always tell you to add friction to their experience and deter fraudulent transactions. The onboarding journey as a whole is essentially your front door to the business. The front door is the biggest defense that you have in place, because you can prevent spending and prevent losses to your business any later down the line. So having the correct measures in place, having the correct tools in place to prevent that kind of activity is essential. And we also suggest that this is an absolute necessity when you're planning your onboarding process. So we, Ekata, again, I mentioned we would tell you a little bit about what we do to kind of help this market. And this is really a great summary of the product itself. We, Ekata, again, going back to that point around not needing a huge amount of data, collect 5 data elements and consider ourselves the best in the market at understanding name, email, phone, IP, and address. And then we look at our Ekata identity engine and service many marketplaces around the world with this product today. We split that identity engine into 2 halves, and that's our identity graph and our identity network. They play hand in hand, they work together to ensure that our customers get the most value. The identity graph is data that we obtain from licensed authoritative source data points around the globe. You heard that we work with about 260 different countries, 2,000 customers worldwide. And we essentially ask the question of whether Matt Wilson lives at this address in the UK, or this phone number belongs to Matt Wilson. So these are checks that need to take place. You need to know the validity of those data elements. On the flip side of that, our identity network is a network that benefits from the 2,000 customers we have and the machine learning that goes in the background to understand where risk is coming from. It might mean that in some occasions, a customer may be brand new to you as a marketplace. It's not always brand new to us. So we'll have understandings of the identity behind that application or the sign up to you. And we'll be able to alert you to potential risk that's already coming to your website. So being able to determine risk at the very earliest stage without going through a huge amount of scrutiny, a huge amount of friction, can be very useful to you, especially as you grow into different markets where you may have very little or no understanding of the customer base in that region. I hope all of that information is clear. Thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate all of your time today. Now is the time for questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Matt. So if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and submit them in the panel. We do have a few that came in. First one for you, Matt. Often when companies think about friction, they ask for less information from their customers in the sign-up process. Would that impact Ekata's response if they provide less details, just like name and address?
Yeah, very good question. I think, as you saw on the previous slide, we focus on 5 data elements generally. So name, email, phone, IP, address. But we appreciate that especially in marketplaces and some other e-commerce environments, that in some occasions those data points aren't all captured. We go back to that right at the start, that point about adding friction. Some customers opt to just take name, address, for example, or name and email, or whatever it might be. So we, as an organization, appreciate that. We've kind of reacted to that market really in the sense that we have tools that are designed for different sectors, different industries. Our account opening products, they're split into account opening API, but also account opening express, which is a product that is designed specifically for companies in marketplaces where data collected is limited. So 2 or 3 different data elements. So yes, we do have products for that particular scenario, and we can adapt to that, and it doesn't affect our ability to prevent fraud or on the flip side of that, improve customer experience as well.
Awesome, thank you. And next question we have, what are some of the main fraud types Ekata sees in marketplaces?
Yeah, good question. I think probably, at least from my perspective in talking to the market, I would say, think about this, I would say probably in marketplaces alone, probably collusion is probably one of the biggest things that we see. So collusion, what I mean by that is collusion between the supplier and the customer. So, you know, classic example, takeaway business and customer, and the customer is saying the food wasn't delivered, but the takeaway itself always knew that that wouldn't be the case. So there's that kind of collusion element that comes into the equation. It actually might be the takeaway that's the fraudulent one in that case. Promotion abuse probably would be another one that comes top of mind. So, you know, marketplaces, again, very competitive space. So you want to be offering new customer offers. It might even be refund abuse as well, where, you know, if you say food arrived and it was cold, I'm going to give you your money back. And there's not a lot of questions being asked there. So probably some of those are top of mind. All of that kind of falls into the category of friendly fraud for me, at least. And friendly fraud is, again, probably across many different industries right now a real challenge, because of course generally it's a customer that presents themselves in the correct way and they are a genuine customer, and are more so opportunistic rather than kind of more technically savvy, like you would see in more the financial services environment, etc.
Awesome, thank you. Another question that just came in, how do you handle the KYC reviews? Is it through a third party?
So we aren't a KYC company. I want to make that clear. So we don't cover KYC for customers worldwide. We generally would sit either pre or post KYC. Our recommendation, particularly in the marketplaces, would be actually that we would suggest that you use our product pre KYC. It goes back to my point earlier about being able to identify good customers and bad customers allows you to route your journey differently for those individuals. So what I mean by that is that if you have a bad customer and you use an Ekata check in this particular example, our recommendation would be, well, why bother sending them to KYC? Because that KYC check is going to cost you money, time, effort, resource, when Ekata already knows that customer is bad with less information than a KYC provider would need. On the flip side of that, for your good customers, Again, Ekata can identify what good looks like. And this is where a lot of our companies that use us today, particularly in marketplaces, will look to route those good customers to the best possible experience, whether that be with their KYC providers or other providers that they use. So giving them that best experience to then go to KYC and progress through to being a customer. That's generally our recommendation, but I would make clear that we do not provide KYC capabilities.
So well, those are all the questions we have. Matt, do you have any closing remarks for us?
Only to say thank you all very much for your time and thank you for joining today. I hope some of the insights I provided were useful to you. And of course, my contact details are here on the screen. If you wanted to get in touch and ask any more, please do. Happy to field them for you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. As a reminder, check out marketplacerisk.com to access this recording along with hundreds of hours of content and to subscribe to our newsletter and stay up to date on all events. Thank you everyone and have a great day.